Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tanya, for setting up our call today. We continue in the second year of the war, horrible war with news really not getting better, to show our faith in a better future by studying together, learning Torah together, and in that itself is a prayer and an act of social justice, a protest for those that are not willing to sit down and talk. As more and more election results come in, and you see just how close these elections are. There's one of the races still contested between blue and red is in Orange County, and there's 400 votes. I just saw the update. 400 votes with the Democratic candidate leading as of now. He was endorsed by many of the organizations that I'm part of. Um, and what strikes me in this is not whether, we'll win or lose as much as just how close is and how close so many of these elections are in so many different places. And that means that should be an encouragement for us to continue this kind of work of sitting down with folks and sitting down with folks who disagree with us as well. Now, I can't really, we shouldn't really brag about what we're doing because I don't know how different all of us folks really are in our progressive views towards religion and towards society. But it's a start, right? It's a start. Okay. We've turned the corner last week into the second part of John. And I did kind of a Freudian error, or combination. I'm not really sure when I titled I always try to give a pithy title to these pages because Madalena wants there to be a title when she sends it out. So I bowed to her desires and her instructions, and I wrote the Feast of Booths, Chag HaSukkot, even though the story, the way it's presented to us now in the format that we have it, presents it as being over Passover. And I'm not sure if I meant to write the Feast of Booths with a question mark or the Feast of Booths / Passover, but behind the Feast of Booths is some scholarship, a scholarly debate, academic debate that hopefully Steve can fill in a lot of the missing data that I have and the missing information. But for now, I think we always want to, at least at the first level, take the story at face value, don't we? And use that. But before we actually go on reading, did anybody want to say anything from last week or something that occurred to them in the days that have passed since then?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the observation that I noticed the language is pretty lofty in the Gospel of John, much different from the Synoptic Gospels. And I don't know, I have no clue as to why that might be, whether it's the influences of the redactors or the experience of the people that transmitted the words.
Thanks for that. I'm going to ask Steve to comment on it just a second, but one of my professors at Hebrew University, Menachem Haran of blessed memory, used to talk about how text came into being. And he would always use it. It was very, a lot of movement with his hands. And he would say, it's like a stone in a river and the water washing over it. For hundreds of years, it gets smoother and smoother and smoother. What he meant was by a text that had been around and had been passed down through many authors. It gets smoothed over in such a way. Perhaps that's one image that might help. But I'd ask Steve actually to.
Yeah, I think we have spoken about the language being in code, but even though it is in code, it is still lofty if you get behind it a little bit.
Don, what do you mean by lofty?
I think it kind of attaches to heavenly realms. Certainly power in what is being said. whether it's true or not. I mean, the connections made, the healing, miracles. That's what I mean
Yeah.
by lofty.
Well, and also it is distinctive from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, right?
Yeah,
We go over the same territory, but in much different ways. It almost feels like to me the synoptic, what we call the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, give us they show us Jesus and his relationships with his people, and they move us towards the cross and the resurrection, but they don't really go inside of that as much as John does. So it feels like to me, the Johannine community and their editors, and through this five-fold process, since the historical events all the way up to the greater separation between the Jews and the Gentiles, as we'll see even in this chapter, it starts to be expressed more so. But my point is that John gives us more insight into who the community believes Jesus is. It's a richer,
Yeah.
more multi-leveled understanding of what it means to be Messiah, to be Son of God, eternal life. All those are code words, but I think they're trying to take us below the surface and behind the scenes, if you will, to an identity of Jesus that's just not there in the synoptics. That's lofty to me. And it even gets loftier in these next 5 chapters, right? I mean, and to David's earlier point, we've now moved beyond the setting of the feast. Is now we're preparing for Passover, which is code for Jesus's final death. And so that's why I like John. John is fascinating to me because it's otherworldly at times, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's because of their purpose to show us a Jesus that can't be seen by 2020 vision on the surface of things. John wants to say more about that.
Of a Jewish mystic.
Oh,
Tales-
yeah. What does he say?
No, that's just the title of Spong's book, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah, you made my point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The mystical inside out view.
Yeah,
Real good.
yeah,
Thank
cool.
you.
Cool. And you know, we're so honored, Steve, that you share with us all this. This must be you know, what, your 30th time studying John, whatever it is. There's so many times, and you picked up from each time you sit with a group and you study it, or when you were in your university days, or whenever it was, you pick up all this material, and then through your own filter, we get to hear all this wonderful stuff that you've accumulated, as well as some of the others as well who have studied Don, others, Dwayne, Steve, who have
Well,
studied.
thanks, David. For me, that's a confirmation of my experience of interpretation, because we all interpret these texts differently, and we have historically and through the ages. And I like Mikhail Bakhtin's understanding of that, where everything's particular. And every time we utter something, it's a new utterance that invites another response. And that's that ongoing midrash over many ages that, for me, makes this a real, it's alive every time I return to it in the way that I try to make sense of it and interpret it through dialogue, always dialogical.
Great. Okay. So then let's begin. Megan, you want to read the beginning of chapter 12 for us?
6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus's feet, wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She brought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." You keep going?
No, I think that's good.
That's a lot.
Quite a bit, yeah. Who'd like to go first with some reflections?
Rita Claire, there's old Mary and Martha again. It's Martha doing all the work. Didn't you say that last week? Yeah.
What was Bethany like at that time? Do you have a sense of that? I mean, I think there was a big hullabaloo about using expensive ointment. So I wonder if it was a poorer village as opposed to a village that would not even glance at what she was doing. But I also like her using her hair to wipe off the excess of the ointment.
Is there a particular symbolism there? Because to me, that's a puzzling detail. Is it shows self-sacrifice? Is it something about the hair itself?
I look, even today, David, hair is a beautiful aspect of a woman, I think. And I remember how long my wife used to take fussing with her hair before we went out. But I think the aspect of giving herself through her parts of her body to Jesus appears strong to me.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. For me, I think the editorial comment about Judas is another, layer of the church's effort. Because again, this is at the end of that first century. The church's effort, they know Jesus was betrayed. That's the story. A disciple did it, but now they're trying to understand it. What was going on? Well, my take is that John identifies him as the treasurer, and maybe that's that esteemed position. I wish Richard was here. Is why Jesus invites him to sit next to him in the upper room later. And for me, Judas was scandalized by what Mary did. And I take him at his word. This could have been used so much more productively. What are you doing? Well, now the biblical writers, the editors, the redactors are seeing that a Messiah is anointed to be king. Jesus is anointed to die. This is kind of a burial preparation. So it has those layers of what kind of kingship, Judas's motives. Maybe he was just greedy and stole, but I think he was scandalized because Jesus is not turning out to be who he needed Jesus to be. And he's betrayed. Judas feels betrayed in a way. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
I think for me, another thing is that there's such an accounting of detail. She's an eyewitness, or someone is witnessing this as an eyewitness. They talk about the scent of the aroma of the oils and how it permeated the house.
Mm.
That's
That's a rich detail, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, it's like walking into a kitchen where they're cooking a turkey for dinner and getting the smells of the delicious meals. Not that this was edible, but a nice smelling perfume would attract your attention, I would
Yeah, and
think.
that juxtaposition between Mary's extravagance, her
Yeah.
generosity, her over the top emotional recognition of something powerful, and then Judas's nitpicky, uh, you know, uh, feeling that it was a waste.
In defense of Judas, I would say, and I feel like I brought this point up once when we were studying, maybe oh, perhaps I said it, maybe it was a time when I was in church when this was the reading. But the this idea of spending money on one thing as opposed to another thing. First of all, Don, it doesn't have to be that Bethany is a poor village, but the ministry of Jesus and the apostles was to the poor. I think that's kind of been established, if not here as much as certainly in the background of this. So it could be the poor anywhere. You could take those coins and go anywhere where there's poor. But the idea that it's Passover and there's a debate where you spend money on Passover. In rabbinic literature, you were commanded to make sure that each and every poor person has enough wine to have 4 cups of wine. That's rabbinic literature already. That tradition would be extant at this time as well. Or buying matzah. So this idea of reassessing where one spends money is a Pesach Dika thing. It's a Passover kind of a question in traditional Judaism. So that's kind of my contribution from a Jewish background point of view. Another thing might be about the hair, Don, is that you may know that hair was covered, or was, if it wasn't covered, it was up. It was put up. For instance, it became the custom to cover, but many people feel that in rabbinic times it just meant your hair was not let down, because when you wanted to humiliate a woman, you would let her hair down, like in the ordeal of the Sotah, the woman who suspected, or in the story of Shoshana, Susanna, that late introduction to the book of Daniel, where they take this beautiful woman out and they let her hair down, right, to humiliate. They took it a step before. In Susanna's case, they also tore open her shirt so everybody could see, so they could feast their eyes. But this idea that hair is a modest thing, and here she using it for, something else. So this is all in the background of a Jewish way of looking at this, and I want to keep that. I'll give some more background, and certainly in the next paragraph. Yeah. But and the other thing is the English we have here, and I didn't take the time to look it up, Steve. I should have. But in the second line, and Lazarus was one of those reclining. I wonder if this translation, the New Revised Standard Version, is intentional as opposed to sitting at the table. Reclining is a verb which is particular to the Passover Seder, right? We're commanded to recline at the Seder. I see in other commentaries that which dinner was this exactly. It feels to me like what's being passed over here. The idea is that they were at the Seder, they were at the Passover meal and reclining. On the other hand, it could be that's, we'd have to look and see.
What you say, David, is interesting because it's an echo of the Hebrew scriptures, and I go back to what we read in John about the woman at the well and the pool at Siloam. All are like symbols of what had been before in the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures.
Good. And we'll get more of that now. Rita Claire, did you want to say something?
One last thing about the poor. I think you pointed it out, David, this contradiction. They serve the poor. That's the blessed are the poor. I mean, and then this wasted anointment that could have served the poor, which I think Judas wanted to stay with, ideally, or maybe. And yet this is such a whoish moment. It's like an eternal moment of recognition, of love and generosity that transcends our ability to technically, instrumentally feed people wherever we go. And I noted in Deuteronomy that observation was there. Yeah, sadly, tragically, folks are going to be poor and they need to be served. But let's not pay all of our attention to the what's. We've got to see the who of people. And Judas couldn't do that. He couldn't see that part.
Can I also say it sounds very intimate, what Mary was doing with Jesus? I mean, when I read this, I haven't read it, but before, but it sounds like a very intimate passage with Mary and Jesus. And
Maybe scandalous, right?
oh yeah, I would think to take your hair down and wash it. I mean, there's sometimes one thing means another, but and in Judas's defense, you know, they're on a mission.
Right.
And they're the guys. And what are we and possibly some jealousy of Mary. I don't know, but it sounds
Or jealousy of Jesus?
or jealousy of Jesus, yes.
Nice. Yeah.
Good one.
Does-
Yeah.
Does this help lead to the speculation that Mary was more to Jesus than a friend? There's lots of literature on that. And of course, if you read the Da Vinci Code, you know that Mary was Jesus' wife. So maybe people took that as being too intimate.
Yeah, I mean, that has been speculated, right? I don't know what to make of it, but what Megan said kind of makes you wonder.
So hold on, what's that? Sasha says perhaps it's reminiscent of Ruth and Boaz on the threshing floor as well.
Ah,
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe there's
how
some.
so?
Yeah.
Sasha, do you want to elaborate? No, it's just just something that came into her mind, but it's the intimacy. Yeah, I guess maybe I would say like this, the way that I understand the scene in Ruth 3 through the eyes of, or the teaching of my teacher Yarozakovich, is that was something that could have happened but didn't happen. A lot of people have thought that's what they did. They went ahead and they because she was single and he was, and it doesn't matter if he was single, but we don't hear anything about his wife anyway. And they could have, except for the whole point of the story, say they could have been intimate, but they weren't until it was in chapter 4. It was made official through that whole process that happens in the book of Ruth, for those that know. If not, it's a quick, easy read, the 4 chapters of Ruth, or if you're in Palm Springs, we're doing the 4th chapter today Reverend Dan is away, but doing at St. Paul's. But I think that's it, this possibility, this brushing up of intimacy in order to show that it wasn't, as opposed to say what many people have speculated, that's just remnants of what was. I don't weigh in, certainly don't know. Just want to say though, that 300 denarii is, a denarii is thought, at least according to Matthew, is a day's wage. So that's a lot of money, right? We're talking about a lot of money for a little vial of perfume.
What
Okay.
was,
I think, to follow up with Megan and with this conversation, what was scandalous also for folks who were more traditional was Jesus's relationships with a lot of women and how he treated women, as women supported him a lot. They're the only ones at the gravesite, at the first.
do you think that Mary was the person anointing Jesus in the tomb with the same ointment. Um,
Well, I think John is just foreshadowing that with this
yeah.
right now. I
Uh,
don't know.
The other thing I notice is that it's really the first time that one of the disciples or apostles um, barks against Jesus and kind of mirrors what the Roman authorities and the Jewish authorities were thinking of. But it's really was the first dispensing of a little bit of poison in the relationship. He showed, and by his character, by his um, almost a manipulative saying, we should have used this for the poor, and that kind of started uh, his downfall, I think.
Yeah, I feel that.
Okay, I'm gonna,
I was seeing
go ahead.
the two sides of it. I wasn't really going down the path that maybe they were intimate, more intimate than that, but there's a interesting, just literary juxtaposition about how intimate it was with her. And then Jesus says that she's doing this, she has this perfume to prepare me for my burial. So
Yeah.
there's intimacy and death, and it's a, and then there's Judas, who's just upset about everything. So, that's what I was trying to say. I didn't get the
Nice.
death part in there, yeah.
Yeah.
So Wayne, you want to take us forward for 9, maybe 9 through 15?
Sure. When the great crowd of Jews learned that he was there, they came not only because of Jesus, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death as well, since it was on his account that many of the Jews were deserting and were believing in Jesus. The next day, the great crowd that had come to the festival heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem. So they took the branches of palm trees and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna, blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord, the King of Israel." Jesus found a young donkey and sat in it, as is written, "Do not be afraid, daughter of Zion. Look, your king is coming, sitting on a donkey's colt."
Okay, there's a lot going on here as well. Aside from, and it's interesting because there's a lot of symbolism to the way the story is being told. We'll get to that in a second, vis-a-vis the holiday, but also as it purports to document, to be a historical document as to what was going on in the minds of the powers to be and wanting to kill Jesus and Eleazar and Lazarus as well. Right, you've got to do away with this threat. We've spoken a lot of times about how this was a threat to stability with under the Roman Empire, under Roman control, and why this got in the way. And this makes it even more devious because it's not just killing Jesus, and any possible living proof of Jesus's godliness. Maybe I'll put it that way. And then comes the challenge. I got to tell you, folks, I have been in a number of churches over the years when this passage has been written and the preacher will say something like, of course, palm fronds are part of the Passover custom. And yeah, if this is the only source you had, you'd think so, but they're not in by any stretch of the imagination. They're not part of Passover. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen this way. I'm not saying that, but it does seem to a number of scholars that this is kind of a conflation of motifs into this narrative, because in order to bring together what's known from the Synoptic Gospels to a new level of understanding how history unfolded in this retelling of history, this Midrash of John. And so that one element from Sukkot, this element from Sukkot is brought over in the calendar to Passover, as is the idea of the prophecy from Zechariah, which we actually saw before earlier. I think it was maybe chapter 7, with the abundance of water. When the scene was officially in the book of John was Sukkot, was the Festival of Booths. So I think a lot of things have happened here, but what we have here though is this Jesus coming out and exemplifying, not the best word, but showing how it's done, with this Hoshana, with this word from the Psalms, from Psalm 118, and a kind of a change, a spin on that particular verse that doesn't have in it the King of Israel, but it does have Hoshana, and later down, blessed are those that come in the name of the Lord. So
What does David, what does 118:26 say?
I don't know if by heart, didn't write it down. I'll get it in a second.
Oh, okay. I thought you were looking at it.
No, that's what I did. I know that's what the background is, but I didn't write it down word for word. Just a second.
Steve, do you know why all of a sudden this parade or festival took off this way? I know
Well, I think there's just this growing this growing spirit of political nationalism, and that, as I understand it, when the Maccabeans revolted and retook the temple, the palm fronds came out to celebrate as Judas Maccabee, what I forget his name, as he's going in to rededicate the temple. The palm fronds were everywhere. So I think that's the connection, not Passover.
So just a note on that. Many believe that initial initiation or the initial holiday was a makeup session for Sukkot that wasn't able to have been celebrated because they were still at war. So and hence we get the 8 days of Hanukkah. It's a makeup session for Sukkot. That's one of the theories. So that would make sense. That falls into it, right?
Yeah.
But it's also the quoting of Zechariah, the business with the donkey. Those are passages that are associated with Sukkot, and Sukkot is also, as we mentioned before, is a kind of a messianic type of a holiday, or became a messianic holiday. The verse in 118:26, well, 118:26 is the welcome verse. The Baruch haba b'shem Adonai berach nuchem beit Adonai. May everyone who enters be blessed in the name of God. We bless you from the house of God. And then further down is where is Hoshana? So why am I not finding Hoshana? Where is Hoshana from? Hoshiana, the way we have it in the prayer book, but obviously not here. Okay. Anyway, that's I think that's the quote. In any case, there's a custom of Hoshana of asking for salvation, Hoshana or Hoshiana, with a palm frond, with the palm fronds in hand. That's from the practice of Sukkot. So it's those things together, I think. So I could understand somebody say, well, it's Judah Maccabee. It's the way when you come announce victory. It could be both as well. But it seems here, and the person who's written about this, who's a old buddy of mine from Talmud class around circa, mid 80s, no, maybe 90 or so, is Jeffrey Rubenstein. No, that's not it. Lovely, wonderful scholar. I think he's at NYU, scholar of rabbinic Judaism. And I don't know if this is online, but his, oh, I'm sorry. I'm totally.
Well, my sense of it is that it's a Hosanna. Yahweh is in the midst. Yahweh is in the midst of Israel as her king, as Messiah. So like you said, the Sukkot has those messianic overtones. And then I just think there's this growing energy towards making Jesus fit into their notion of Messiah. And that this is a call to nationalism, to reassert Israel's place. That's how it feels to me, but Jesus subverts every one of those expectations as this unfolds. Like I said, his crown is of thorns, not gold. His robe is mocking him. His entrance is on this donkey. So I think this is coming to a head. Literally, the narrative. It's forcing the question of his identity and what that's going to be.
Someone else?
I was just gonna ask, in verse 11, since it was on account of him that many of the Jews were deserting, does that mean they were leaving the temple and not observing?
Let's see, Wayne, where was that again?
Verse 11,
Since it was on account of him, Lazarus, that many of the Jews were leaving the synagogues to follow the Jesus folks.
yeah,
Is that,
deserting, so does that mean they were giving up the temple entirely and? Jesus-
I think it's an anachronism.
I do too.
In other words, that this is in the reality of synagogues and leaving different kinds of synagogues or being kicked out of different kinds of synagogues. That's happening where this is being written later after destruction of the temple, but it's being scoped onto or telescoped onto as if they were leaving the temple. That's there's nothing else. You can't really leave the temple. There's only one place to do sacrifices in the time of Jesus, right? There's only one. You could do other stuff. You could study the Torah. You could gather for feasts for breaking bread, but there's only one place where it's the center of worship, recognized by all Jews, other than Samaritans, of course, that have their own place.
Could we say that this author is making a strong connection between Jesus and the temple? I mean,
About
from
that.
the light, from the light of prophecies in Zechariah and Ezekiel, also, I mean,
Well, there is that Christian reflection on Jesus as priest, right?
yeah,
As the sacrifice himself, as the lamb. But I also think, to Wayne's question, this is an important thing for our group to get clear about. And I don't know that we are, but you've got the Jews, you've got some of the Jews, you've got Jesus and his Jews and those Jews who follow him and continue to be and intend to be good Jews, though they're now taken by him and they're believing in him. And then when the cat is let out of the bag, and that forces this conflict between the structures of Judaism and the emerging structures of Christianity that has now moved to Gentiles, non-Jews. But I also want to throw in the fact that this tension is real after the temple was destroyed, and they're trying to make it go together, but it doesn't. And then suddenly it's polarized irreparably when the Jewish synagogue, the folks in the synagogues are welcoming Christians, but you want to be circumcised. You want to be a good Jew. When the Christians started letting folks in who weren't circumcised, they started supplanting Jesus. The idea of Yahweh with Jesus, who embodies that literally. And so, Wayne, I just think at the time this was given to the public, this was already happened, that tension. And then remember earlier, I think it was last week, David mentioned that this also incites Rome against the Jewish people in a way that is not helpful.
In terms of the deserting part, not to belabor that word, verse. But it seems to me, if here's a man who is getting crowds of 5,000 or more, we've had 5,000, so there are 5,000 people. And if they're deserting the temple, it's some of this and why the chief priests are upset is that it's a moneymaker for them. They do have their sacrifices in the temple, which, as I understand it, they pay for. So maybe there's a bit in their mind of an economic component to this. They're losing money because this Jesus guy is saying something that doesn't comport with what we believe. And so they're deserting the temple, and our coffers are getting smaller because of him.
Well, I mean, that's always, I remember dealing with that in Fredericksburg at the church, right? So that's got to be a part of it. I do think it should be understood against the background of this struggle between the synagogue and the emerging church in the late first century.
Okay. Anything else?
I was just going to say the parts when I read through this and when we read through it again that stood out was I felt first like the writer was being snarky about Judas, and because he commented on his motives and stuff, but I think that was revealing. And then the same thing when he said that the chief priests wanted to put Lazarus to death too, because they're trying to stifle this. And it just made me think about motive, I guess. People can have their motives. Maybe Judas he's expecting this conquering Messiah and it's not going the way he wants. But other people are seeing it differently. They're saying, well, the guy, what we saw, he was a thief and he was taken from the common purse and doing that. And then this other group, these chief priests, said, we got to put him to death. And I don't know if that complements what Wayne said, that, it's going to get into our what we're making off of the sacrifices. I don't know what their motives were, but it's this picture of motive within the individual, how whatever theirs may be and how others see it. And then the same thing back with Mary, her motive was just almost, it seemed worshipful to go sort of anoint him and let her hair down and put the oil on his feet. Hers was coming from a different place. So I don't know if that means anything, but that's the parts that sort of spoke to me in these two passages.
That's nice, Steve. And I would just add that John's motive, the community of John's motive is to make the contrast between those who kill men and those who raise men back to life, and those who worship God and those who have a transactional view with God. This is a universal theme for me. I mean, I know it's set between Jews and Christians, but I see this dynamic, in all over in literature and movies and communities, where you have some folks who are out for themselves and their protection, and others who have learned how to be more generous and care for people, at the core. I think this is now, that's what I meant by this is coming to a head. It got located in this historic religious struggle, but it applies more broadly in my thinking.
Okay, so
Stu, what are you thinking?
To me, it sounds like a fairy tale. This is all, to study this like this is all really new.
And by fairy tale, is that derogatory or just observation?
Observation.
Uh-huh. Nice. It kind of is. Oh, that's, I mean, I hear that. Maybe that's the lofty part that comes across as well. I don't know. Do you make any, does that mean anything, that observation, or does it make you see the text in a different way?
I guess so.
All right. Well, thanks for that.
Could you speak, Steve, to the connection between the washing of the feet? We should have done it in that paragraph, and the customs, the liturgies before leading up to Easter in the church?
Say it again.
Isn't this have something to do with the washing of the feet on Thursday before Easter, or am I confusing things?
No,
Yeah, my feeling is that this scene in 12 is they're preparing for Passover. And then in chapter 13, next week, to chapter 17, they're literally in the upper room. And many scholars believe that to be their observance of Passover. And the washing of the feet, yeah, it's another one of those subversions of many people's desire that he has power and can help them. And Jesus says, this is my power. I'm asking you to follow this approach. And we'll get into that. Not next week because it's Thanksgiving, but the week after.
Don?
yeah, I think in a liturgical sense, the washing of the feet on Holy Thursday is an act of humility, but it also is an act of servitude too. Someone in power stoops to wash areas of the body that in that country and in those times were subject to a lot of travel and a lot of dust and a lot of dirt. So it was really a giving up of oneself to another,
Yeah,
symbolic.
and maybe that, I missed David's question, Maundy Thursday, Dave, which comes from mandatum in Latin. This is my commandment to you, that you love one
Of
another
one another.
as I
Yeah.
have loved you. And
Oh,
so
Is that based on
that's the liturgical setting for that.
Okay, right, okay, so just wanted to clarify that. I mean, I've had, I actually didn't have it done, but once one of my priest friends, I was there in church for that, and he said, I was really looking forward to washing the feet of the rabbi. I didn't follow, I didn't go through, there's certain red lines that I've drawn for myself, even in the churches that are welcoming of everybody.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah, I
maybe-
mean, the humbling part is not doing the washing, it's exposing your feet.
Yeah, but it's also kneeling down too.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it. Well, in 2 weeks, I think that's an important chapter. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, all right, so I jumped the gun. All right, let's see if we can squeeze in one more paragraph. Don, you want to read this, the 16?
Sure. His disciples did not understand these things at first, but when Jesus was glorified, they remembered that these things had been written of him and had been done to him. So the crowds that had been with him when he called Lazarus out of the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to testify. It was also because they heard that he had performed this sign that the crowd went to meet him. The Pharisees then said to one another, "You see, you can do nothing. Look, the world has gone after him."
As we say in Yiddish, the ganze Welt, the whole world. while we were reading this, I realized why Sasha was reminded of that scene in 3. It's not just the intimacy of 2, but it says that Ruth uncovered his feet. Ruth, it's direct connection with the feet, and there's sexual innuendo there, even though, but that's, sorry, that just to clean up that little bit. Okay,
Wayne, you're muted.
Yeah,
Oh,
I had a problem yesterday and my brother died yesterday and that was my
Oh.
nephew calling.
Wayne,
I just told him I'd call him back in a minute.
your brother died?
Yeah,
God bless you. I'm sorry.
yeah, the rabbi commented.
Mm,
Mm.
Wow.
Yes, Rita Claire.
I can't help but think yesterday every once in a while I have my nails done and I get a pedicure. I had a pedicure yesterday that was absolutely wonderful. There is something very soothing and satisfying about having your feet rubbed. My nails, no, but my feet, absolutely. So I think there's something about that is very physical. It certainly was not had nothing to do with any kind of sexual feeling whatsoever. It's just a soothing, relaxing feeling.
I love that.
Did
Thank
you
you.
pay, did you pay extra for the
You
deluxe oil?
must be.
No, they didn't charge me extra. Actually, I'm amazed. I usually I don't like to be kind of touched, but that was just having my feet rubbed like that was so, I almost wanted to fall asleep.
Mhm. You must be a good receiver. I can give all day long, but receiving is so hard for me. And to have someone wash my feet just scares me.
Really?
I mean,
Well-
yeah, a little bit. I'm over exaggerating maybe, but in general, yeah, it's hard to receive gifts.
That's part of that's the normal part of a pedicure. You get your feet washed, you get you get lotion put on your feet and your legs, besides polish or anything like that. That's the
Well,
normal.
as a spiritual practice, Sue, I'm going to go get a pedicure. I think this will be good
Yes.
for me.
Yes.
A nail technician will also, when they do a man's feet, they will also cut your toenails. And if they're very thick, they're the only ones who can do that.
Okay,
I
I
love
I just want you to spring for the extra special oil, Steve, okay?
Yeah.
Make sure you get that expensive oil and, you know.
They do
Oh.
use a lotion or oil on your feet. It's not that expensive, I'm sure.
Y'all have inspired me. Okay.
We
I
haven't read
promise, next time we meet, I will have had that pedicure and
Okay, you let me
share
know
the
how
story.
you feel. Yes.
Now, I do want to, I know we've got a break, but I love this ending with the editors saying they didn't get it at first, but in light of all that has happened, they can reflect and look back and begin to mine the depths of meaning and make interpretations as they hear other stories, and every story changes how they interpreted it. It's like a hermeneutic philosopher that I follow said that, at World War I, everybody called it the war to end all wars. In light of World War II, they now call it World War I, and it changes the meaning. And so I just think that's an important interpretive tool for us as we talk about this.
Before we leave, I was wondering, would I put you on the spot, Rabbi, if you would say the mourner's prayer for Wayne's brother?
Not at all, so. Oh, what was your brother's name, Wayne? Please remind me.
You muted, Wayne.
It was John.
No.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים המשא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה. מעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מסעירים. ונשמת ידידנו ג'ון שהלך לעולמו. בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו. אנא בעל רחמים, הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו. וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן. O God, the one full of mercy, please take the soul of our friend John. Watch over it. Connect it with the souls of all those who have come close to you previously. May we find blessing when we find ways to honor his memory. May we continue in the good ways that he walked. And let us say amen.
Amen.
Amen. You're a good shepherd, Don. Thanks for that. Because I was bummed.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Wayne, cheers. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Thank you, Tanya.